From the very beginning of human civilization, ethics has been praised as a core value, a standard for distinguishing right from wrong, good from evil. But is morality really as noble as we believe? Or is it just a made-up concept to control and direct human behavior according to the deeper goals? Friedrich Nietzsche, the great philosopher of the 19th century, challenged this notion by calling morality slave morality, a system created to protect the weak and bind the strong. Meanwhile, Sigmund Freud argues that morality is not a voluntary choice, which is part of the superego socially implanted in people's minds from a young age. The question here is morality a real value or just a mask worn to hide the primitive instincts of man? In different periods, behaviors that were once considered moral becomes unethical and vice versa. So morality is not immutable. Since the Middle Ages, obedience to the church is considered a virtue, but today resistance and freedom are praised again. In some cultures, sacrifice for the good of the group is considered moral. But in today's societies, individual rights come first. Is morality a sacred value or just a tool created to direct behavior toward the benefit of a group of people? A primitive world where people have no language, no rules, and there is no concept of right or wrong. Ethics as we know it today is not something that has existed since the appearance of man. It is a product of evolution built by the needs of human survival and development. In nature, animals have no concept of morality. They only have instincts: eat, survive, reproduce. But when humans began to live in herds, instinct alone is not enough. The existence of a community requires order, a form of conduct to reduce conflict and protect common interests. For example, sharing food does not stem from charity, but comes from the need to maintain peace, to maintain stability within the group. Repetitive behaviors accepted and rewarded by the community gradually becoming the norm. This is the beginning of the concept of ethics, not from the principles of the statue, but from the practical need to survive. As small communities grew into societies, power emerges. And when power comes, morality from a set of unwritten agreements gradually became a tool shaped by the powerful to maintain order according to their will. The ruler not only controls resources, but also controls consciousness. Ethics then becomes a designed system to protect the interests of the ruling class. For example, in feudal times, absolute loyalty to God is considered a virtue, while protesting was subjected to unethical torture. So that's what ethics really is, or just a way to protect the power of the leader. Religion also plays an important role in creating and reinforcing ethical concepts. Major religions such as Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism has brought clear codes of conduct. This creates the feeling that morality is sacred and inviolable. But is this really for the benefit of humanity? Or just another way to maintain the power of religious organizations? Although often associated with the sacred and immutable, actual ethics are constantly changing over time, reflect social change and the forces that govern it. For example, in ancient times, slave ownership was considered moral, but today it is considered a crime against humanity. In contrast, actions such as fighting for equal rights, once considered immoral, now celebrated as a symbol of progress. However, ethical conflicts has always existed between cultures. What is considered ethical in a place might be considered unethical elsewhere. For example, in some cultures, protecting family honor can justify acts of violence. But in other cultures, this is completely unacceptable. Therefore, morality is not an immutable truth, but is a product of history, power, and survival needs. But are these values Does it really reflect the good nature of man, or are they just a shell, a way to hide the selfish motives hidden deep inside? This is a question we need to continue to ponder when looking at different cultures. It is clear that ethics is not an immutable system. It changes with time, context, and social conditions. In Japan, the samurai spirit promotes honor. Becomes so suicidal if you cannot protect your honor. But in modern Western society, individual survival is more important than collective honor. Some cultures value sacrifice for family or community. Meanwhile, Western societies emphasizes individual freedom and interests. This difference also extends to specific standards. In Western societies, women's rights are seen as a symbol of progressive morality, but in many conservative cultures, female submission is still considered traditional morality. If morality is not uniform globally, can it be considered a universal value? Or is it just a product of cultural systems and different powers? Contradictions in the concept of morality also clearly shows between individual and collective interests. During wartime, renunciation is often praised as virtuous. But for individuals, the price to pay is their lives. Is this act really noble? Or is it just a way for the collective to exploit the individual? On the contrary, the sleepy ones, although considered unethical, act on instinct to protect life. History has recorded many cases of collective morality used to punish individuals. The magistrates' courts in the Middle Ages punished those who disobeyed the teachings, consider them unethical. But is this really moral protection, or just to strengthen the power of the church? Not all moral systems are created equal. People in power often define and impose morality to protect their interests. Religion does not only bring moral values, but also turn them into tools to control the masses. The medieval church used the concept of morality to legalize tax payment, join the crusade, and oppress those who do not comply. In today's world, morality is sometimes used as a political weapon. Military intervention in other countries often justified as protecting human rights. But is the real motive moral? Or is it just a way to consolidate international power? In the age of media and social networks, man does not live only to do the right thing, but also have to look right. This puts enormous pressure on the individual. Vegan movements or cancel culture, often justified as moral protection, but in many cases they are just emotional attacks, turn morality into a tool to destroy the individual. People today are not just trying to do the right thing, but also to demonstrate that they are doing the right thing. This makes morality sometimes no longer a real value, but is just a mask to meet social expectations. Ethics, though praised as a universal value, reality is full of contradictions and impositions. It can be used as a tool for control or a system dominated by power. But in whatever form, the big question remains: does morality really help people live better? Or is it just a way for humans to control each other? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most controversial philosophies in history, not see traditional morality as a noble value. For him, morality is not a universal truth, but a tool designed by the weak to control the strong. He divided morality into two opposing forms: slave morality and the morality of the strong values, such as humility, sacrifice, and forgiveness, are not expressions of superiority, but the morality of slaves. They were created to restrain strong individuals, people who dare to live true to their instincts and to make the strong feel guilty about their strength. Opposite, Nietzsche exalted the morality of the strong, creativity, power, and free will. He believes that this is the real value, help people overcome all limits and achieve greatness. Sigmund Freud, founder of psychoanalysis, provides a deeper psychological perspective on morality. According to Freud, morality is not a voluntary choice, which is part of the unconscious socially implanted in people's minds from a young age. Freud called this part the voice of society within each individual, forcing them to comply with ethical standards even if they don't want to. However, this superego often conflicts with human nature. Freud believed that instincts, basic desires, and wants always oppressed by social morality. This repression leads to psychological stress, and sometimes those tensions explode into behavior that society considers unethical. For Freud, morality is not an intrinsic value, but is a social imposition to maintain order, sometimes at the expense of personal comfort and happiness. Unlike Nietzsche and Freud, pragmatism takes a more flexible approach to ethics. According to this theory, morality is not an immutable truth, but rather a tool to achieve the best results in each context. An action that can be considered ethical in a situation but becomes unethical in other situations. For example, sacrificing a small group to save the collective can be considered ethical, even though it violates the principle of no killing. This shows that in practice, morality is not in the action itself, but in the results that the action brings. In general, under the lens of death studies, morality is not a universal truth, but is a flexible concept. Reflects the contradictions in people and society. Nietzsche saw in traditional morality an instrument of control. Freud discovered the imposition of society on the individual unconscious, while pragmatism focuses on efficiency instead of absolute. This leads us to the question in the modern world, as society becomes more complex and conflicting values. Are traditional ethical concepts still relevant? In the modern world, ethics is no longer an immutable concept as sacred as we once thought. With the explosion of media and technology, ethics has become a flexible concept, sometimes even manipulated and dominated by various forces. A clear example is how the media shapes public perceptions of right and wrong. Instead of just providing information, today's media often creates moral stories to direct public opinion towards a certain goal. Environmental or human rights campaigns, though brought back to the sublime, sometimes exploited by groups with economic or political interests. Ethics in the modern world. Is it really worth it, or just a tool to control the public? Social networks with their rapid spread has become an ideal environment to amplify collective moral standards. A typical example is running arm movements. Initially, it was seen as a tool to criticize wrongdoings, but today it is often abused to attack individuals or organizations based on herd sentiment. In many cases, the actions or words that are condemned are judged without any context. As a result, instead of creating understanding and improving society, these movements again fill people with fear, dare not express opinions or act contrary. This makes ethics inherently valuable for promoting understanding, sometimes become tools of collective pressure and exclusion. Besides artificial intelligence, AI has posed new challenges to the concept of ethics. Unlike humans, AI has no conscience, emotions, or sense of right and wrong, but are tasked with making important decisions. A self-driving car must choose between saving the driver or avoid causing accidents to others. How does it make choices? What ethical rules will be programmed into AI, and whether they are appropriate to all socio-cultural contexts? In addition, AI is also used to monitor and manage human behavior. So does this violate personal freedom? As AI is used by large corporations to optimize profits, can moral values prevail over economic interests? And if man with all his complexity still not agreed on ethics? So how can we expect a mindless machine to do any better? A notable feature of today's society is the division in moral values. The world no longer shares a common moral system as it once did. Actions that are considered ethical. What is considered unethical in one place may be considered unethical in another. For example, vegetarianism is praised for protecting animals. But for those who depend on livestock, that could be seen as a threat to their livelihood. Moreover, the modern world encourages individual freedom, leading to people defining morality in their own way. A person refuses to be vaccinated because it is considered personal freedom. But this action may be considered unethical because of the threat to public health. This division leads us to ask the question, can society continue to maintain stability when there is no longer a common moral system to guide human behavior? Besides ethics in the modern world, not just a system of values, but also becomes an invisible but powerful psychological pressure. Many people do not act out of belief in true moral values, but because of the desire to meet social expectations. This creates a phenomenon we call hypocrisy, where behavior is merely performative rather than coming from inner belief. On social media, trying to maintain a perfect moral image can make many people feel tired and self-conscious. Trying to be the right person in the eyes of the community, whether in person or online, sometimes leading to stress and mental exhaustion. Ethics in modern form. Does it really help people live happier, or is it just another burden in an increasingly complicated life? In short, in today's world, ethics is no longer a simple or immutable concept. It faces media manipulation challenges from artificial intelligence and the fragmentation of social values. Instead of being a tool to improve life, morality sometimes turns into psychological pressure and means of human control. But is there any way to redefine morality, turn it into a value system that truly serves people? Or is it time we abandon this concept to seek other values that are more real and more authentic? Through what Tom analyzed, we see that morality concept once considered core to society is not essentially an immutable or universal value. It changes over time. Culture and power reflects diversity in perceptions and social interests. Ethics is both a tool of control and is a burden that each individual must carry. On the one hand, it helps maintain social order, but on the other hand, it can become an imposed system. Keep people imprisoned in the norms of servitude and collective pressure. However, morality is not entirely a lie. Historically, it has played an important role in maintaining order and promoting social development. But in today's context, when society is increasingly complex and rapid change, traditional moral doses are still relevant. Perhaps instead of accepting a fixed moral system, we need to build a new value system more flexible, allowing people to be true to themselves but still maintain harmony with the community. Challenging existing ethical definitions and constantly question its value. It is necessary to adapt to changes in society, technology, and individual perception. Focus on being true to yourself and learn to understand and respect other people's differences. Choose to live not just to conform, but to create, not just to judge, but to sympathize. Morality ultimately does not lie in what others impose on you, but in the way you choose to become the best version of yourself sincerely and meaningfully. Thank you for accompanying Tam. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below so we can discuss. Wish you and your family good health.